Hi, everyone. I'm Kevin Parker. I'm one of the elders here at Cypress Bible Church. As I record this today, we are entering into our 5th month of our national pandemic. When it started here in Houston in the middle of March, many of us hoped our experience of illness and lockdown would be a sprint and that we could push through it and move on with life. In recent weeks, though, with the new spikes in the infection count, we've learned that the sprint has become a marathon. And that rather discouraging thought has got me thinking about what the Bible teaches us about races. Specifically, how the writer of Hebrews compared our life to a race. In the first few verses of chapter 12, stating, "Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us, looking to Jesus, the founder and perfecter of our faith, who, for the joy that was set before him, endured the cross, despising the shame, and is seated at the right hand of the throne of God." So the writer of Hebrews encourages us to live our lives as a race where we cast aside sin and the other things that hinder us. It's strong imagery, and it's directly applicable to our life in this pandemic. We should rid ourselves of sin, and we should lay aside those other things that entangle us and hinder our walk with God, so that we can focus on moving through this time in a way that glorifies Him. And that's especially the case as we see this transform from a sprint to a marathon. But it's what this verse says about what our focus should be that I want to address today. It says that as we are running the race, we should look to Jesus, the founder and perfecter of our faith, who, for the joy that was set before him, endured the cross. That's how we get through this race, by looking to Jesus. No, by actually focusing on him. And I would suggest that we can do that in two ways. First, by remembering constantly what he did for us. And second, by imitating the manner in which he did it. We should remember what Christ did. He endured the cross. He despised its shame. His race for us was one of unmatched suffering. But he endured that suffering because of his love for us. He loved us and literally did everything for us. And so, are we discouraged by confinement? We should remember that Christ loves us and has suffered for us. Are we lonely? We should remember that Christ is with us and practice his presence. Are we suffering financial loss or even calamity? We should remember Christ's promises to provide us with everything we need. Are we suffering with illness? We should remember God's promise to provide us a new body and know that when we suffer, we become like Christ. As we endure this race, we must focus on Christ by remembering who he is and what he has done. But we should do more than that. We should also imitate him. You see, Christ did not run this race to finish before everyone else. He ran it to bring us all with him. We see that from his statements while on the cross, as he prayed for God to forgive those who caused his suffering, and as he promised the thief that they would be in paradise together that day. We see it in the way he laid aside his power and his rights and instead went to the cross. Jesus had the power to defeat the people who sent him to the cross. He laid aside that because he knew we needed him to go to the cross. And Jesus had the right not to go to the cross because he was actually innocent of any crime. But he laid that aside because he knew we needed him to go to the cross for us. And so as we run this race through the pandemic, perhaps we should consider how we can help others finish the race by laying aside our own rights. As Americans, we have the right to travel across state lines. but perhaps we lay that aside to help others avoid this virus. You may feel that you have the right not to wear a mask, but instead of insisting on that right, perhaps we set that aside to help prevent the spread of the virus. We all want to get through the challenge of the 2020 pandemic, but let's do so by keeping our focus on Christ. And let's imitate Christ by doing all we can to help others through it.